One winter had gone by since the pavilion in the valley. The frost lay deeper on the curtain wall. The house had kept its shape. A courier came to the gate before the household woke. He placed a folded page in the gatehouse tray and turned his horse without waiting. The seal was dark grey wax. The mark pressed into it was a circle broken across the top. Aldric stood at his desk in the candlelit study with the letter in his gloved hand. He knew the mark before he read the page. He had last seen it at the foot of a sentence in a dead man's tent.
Who brought this?
A crown courier, riding alone.
Whose orders?
The counter-signature is a man buried 18 years.
He opened the page. 3 lines of ink. A cliff road. A coastal league. A date 3 weeks out. No greeting. No signature. The broken circle pressed again at the foot.
It has no sender.
It has a sender. It has no name.
In the library, Lyra sat at the table with a stub of charcoal. She drew a ring and broke it across the top. She drew another. She drew a row.
Little love. Where did you see this?
On Papa's letter.
Seraphine lifted the paper carefully from the table. She did not scold. She did not correct. She folded the scrap and carried it upstairs.
The child copied it from your desk. She saw it once and held it in her head for a night. She drew it 40 times before I found her.
She is 9.
The mark means something to her already. That is what I came to tell you. It has entered this house through more doors than the one.
Cael came to the study at dusk. He did not ask. He already knew he was going.
You ride at my shoulder, not the rearguard, not the messengers, the shoulder.
Yes.
If I fall, you do not charge. You turn the horse and you ride.
Yes.
Say it back to me.
If you fall, I turn the horse and I ride.
A royal courier came up the great hall steps in the late afternoon with a sealed scroll. Aldric broke the red wax and read the 3 signatures at the foot. 3 men he knew had been dead for years.
Orders countersigned by ghosts.
The same hand as before.
The same hand.
They parted at the inner gate at first light. 2 small escorts drawn up on the stones. Seraphine bearing north toward a coast she had never seen. Aldric and Cael bearing east toward an address on a letter that had no sender.
Come back.
I will.
And bring him back.
I will.
The north road ran alongside a leaden sea under a kelp dark sky. Seraphine rode at the center of a small escort of 4. The cloak stiffened with salt by the second afternoon. The Drowned Abbey stood below on a tidal flat, half its lower walls slick dark where high water reached. The roof was broken at the nave. A single crooked bell tower still stood against grey cloud. She dismounted on flagstones slicked with brine. Kelp in the cracks of the path. The escort held the horses back. She went up the steps alone. Inside the nave, columns of pale winter light angled through gaps in the vault. A handful of tallow candles burned at a stone side altar. Gulls moved across the clear story like a slow loose ceiling. An old woman rose slowly from a low stone bench at the altar rail. Ink-stained fingers on a plain wooden rail. Pale eyes finding her across the floor.
Lady Vane.
Sister.
I was a girl when the last of them was taken off this rock. I kept what they left behind. I never wrote to anyone because no one alive was safe to write to.
You were waiting for someone.
I was waiting for the mark to surface again. It has. You came. You are a long time coming.
They sat at a battered wooden scribe's table by the north wall. A single tallow candle between them. A plain clay jug of water. The first full sentence of a 40-year silence began across the wood.
My husband was the Abbey scribe. He kept a second ledger under his own name. He kept it for 40 years. He died the night he closed it and asked me to put it under the tide.
And you did?
I did. I have waited for someone to ask me where it is. No one has asked until today.
She drew a long iron key on a leather thong from beneath her linen collar. Salt-pitted. Old as the Abbey walls. She laid it on the table between them. The stair to the crypt ran narrow under the nave. They went down with guttering lanterns. Dark water lapped at the fourth step from the bottom. Sarcophagi stood half submerged to their lids in still black water. Kelp drifted across the drowned floor. Sister Idra waded thigh-deep into the black water and hauled out a small iron-bound sea chest from behind a sarcophagus. Seraphine held both lanterns from the lowest dry step. The chest's timbers were salt-bloated and dark. The lock was still intact. Back in the nave, she set a thick leather-bound ledger open on a folded dry cloth across the altar. The pages were salt-warped but legible. 3 generations of careful scribe's hand. Dark columns going back.
Grain withheld from a starving province. A road burned by riders with no banner. A payment into a quiet column. Another. Another.
Keep reading.
Malachar. His name inked in full, 6 years ago. Above him, 3 shaded entries going back a century.
A house with no sigil. The mark is a circle broken at the top. A hole in the record where a family was meant to stand.
Orel.
Orel. The crown cut the name out of the roll 3 generations ago. It did not cut the house out with it. The house kept working.
She asked who had written it. The old woman lifted her pale eyes from the altar and answered without flinching.
My husband. He kept it 40 years. He died the night he closed this volume. I put it under the tide the next morning as he asked.
And you have lived on this rock ever since?
I have lived here. I have waited. I have been the lock. You are the key.
Seraphine rode out of the abbey at dusk with the ledger wrapped in oilcloth in her saddlebag. Miles back, in a village lane, the local bailiff lay face down on his own step in lantern light. A single stranger's glove at the edge of the frame. She did not know yet. A rider caught her on the coast road 2 hours later with a folded note. She read it once and did not slow her horse. She rode hard. The tide came in over the shingle steps and covered the place where the bailiff had fallen. East of the estate, on a low marsh causeway at grey midday, Aldric rode at the head of a small column with Cael at his right shoulder. Black water on both sides. Reeds crusted with frost. A dozen riders behind. A small stone wayside shrine stood beside the causeway. The crest in its niche had been gouged away in 3 heavy strokes. Fresh chisel marks pale against weathered stone.
Recent. Inside a month.
Whose house was it?
That is the question. Someone is still unwriting them.
Cael watched his father read the road. Wheel ruts. Hoof prints in frozen mud. The pattern of feet behind a shoulder of reeds. He tried to see what his father saw. He kept his questions behind his teeth. Aldric reined in. Far out across frozen reed flats, a single figure in a long dark coat stood motionless, watching the road. Too far to name. The wind moved the reeds and the figure was no longer there.
A scout.
A mark.
The causeway narrowed between two reed walls. Shoulder-high frozen reed on either side. The road pinched to two horses abreast under a low grey sky. The kind of geography that chooses an ambush for you. Dark coats rose from the reeds on both sides. 8 men with short blades and no banner. The lead rider of the Vane column went down. Aldric's sword cleared the sheath in the same movement that he turned his horse.
Cael.
I see them.
Stay on my shoulder.
I am.
A man came up out of the reeds on Cael's left. The boy's belt knife went in where he had been drilled to put it. The weight dropped against him. He held it up for a strange beat and then let it go. After, the fight ended the way fights end, loudly and then at once. Cael was on one knee at the edge of the causeway, the knife still in his hand, his face white. Aldric knelt beside him with a gloved hand heavy on his shoulder. Neither spoke. Aldric searched the attackers where they lay. No crest on the coats. No rings on the fingers. No tattoos on the forearms. Men erased even as corpses. In an inner seam, a folded page, a rough map of the causeway with the Vane column's approach already inked in, a small broken circle marked above the ambush point.
They had the route before we did.
My lord.
Lay them out. I want to see each face.
The 8 were laid in a row on the frozen reed edge. Aldric walked the line. Cael walked behind him and forced himself to look. No crest. No ring. No tattoo. Men unwritten on purpose. By dusk, the column came down into a small salt-weathered village at the foot of the cliff. Aldric and Cael reined in beside a wool-clad village elder in the lane. Aldric asked about the hall on the cliff. The old man said there was no such hall. He said it twice. As he said it, his hand lifted almost unconsciously and pointed slightly up the coast toward a cliff above the fog. He did not notice the gesture. Aldric did. They did not press him. They rode on past a roofless stone lighthouse on a black pebble shingle beach. Its iron brazier broken at the crown. The winter tide dragging over shingle below. A cold slate-green sea. They made a small driftwood fire in the lee of the dead lighthouse. Aldric poured a tin cup of something hot and passed it across. Cael took it with hands that still remembered a knife going in.
Your first was a man who was already coming for me. That is the only first that makes sense. You will remember his face. You do not have to tell me whose.
I did not think about it. It was training until it wasn't, and then I did it and then it was over. I thought I would think about it more than I did.
You will. Some of it tonight. Most of it in 10 years. None of it is wrong.
It does not feel wrong. That is the part one did not expect.
That is the part no one tells you. You will be honest with yourself about it, or it will turn on you later. Be honest with yourself about it.
Later, at dead of night, Cael stood alone at the edge of the shingle. A thin winter moon on black water. Far up the coast, a single lit window in a cliff hall. One small gold square against the sea. A house that did exist. In the morning, they rode up the cliff road. A long low stone hall on a sea cliff. No banners on its walls. No crest above its gate. Sea fog pushing up the cliff face. Dull grey light on slate roofs and rain-dark stone. A silent steward in undyed coastal wool opened the gate without ceremony. No guard. No herald. No challenge. The courtesy of a house that did not need to announce what it was. The inner hall was hung with undyed seawool tapestries that carried only abstract patterns of waves. No heraldry anywhere. Tall fogged grey casement windows along one wall let in pearl light. They walked its length beside the silent steward. At the far end of the hall, an old woman stood alone by a tall fogged casement. One hand on the stone sill. The sea grey and flat behind her. She turned as the men approached. Storm grey eyes settled on Aldric. A courtesy in her face that did not reach her eyes.
Lord Vane, you have come further than the crown has ever come, and you have come politely. My house will return that courtesy. We have no banner, because a banner was taken from us 3 generations ago, and we did not replace it. The mark you saw is what we put in its place.
Lady Aurel.
You know the name. You have done the work. Please. Sit.
No bow from her. No title from him after that first one. 2 chairs at a low slate hearth. A girl of 15 stood a pace behind Serin's chair with sea-grey eyes and ash-blonde hair cropped short. She looked at Cael carefully. He felt the look and did not return it.
Lord Vane's son, 15. I am told you ride at his shoulder now.
I do.
So do I. At hers.
Then we understand each other.
The steward and 2 servants carried a long dark oak side table forward. 3 heavy bound ledgers were set down in a row. The covers bore no crest. Only a plain date stamped in silver. Serin rose and laid a hand on the first of them.
The first is the famine. Grain withheld from the northern provinces in the winter of year 61. 111 villages. You will find the deaths in the left column and the payments in the right. The payments are the half of the book that matters.
Paid to whom?
To a column that has no name at the top. The column is what you came for. Keep reading.
She turned to the second ledger. The page was a map annotated in a careful hand. Roads marked in red where they had been burned. Villages circled where they had been abandoned after. Dates in the margin. Names of riders who wore no banner.
The second is the roads. A generation after the famine. Same column. Same hand at the top we do not name. My grandmother oversaw the copying. She did not order the burning. She oversaw the record of it, so that it could not be denied later. That was her work.
Oversaw.
Oversaw. Not ordered. The distinction matters to me. It will matter to you in a moment.
She turned to the third ledger, the most recent. Her weathered finger stopped at the bottom of a column. The name Malachar inked in full above a date from 7 years ago. Above him, 3 unnamed shaded entries going back decades.
He was the last instrument. The one before him you buried in a pavilion. The one before that my aunt saw hanged in year 78. The shape does not change. The hand at the top of the column does not change.
And your house?
My house has kept these 3 books for 100 years and never used them. We have watched the chain work, and we have written down what it did. That, Lord Vane, is also a kind of war. It is the one we could fight without banners.
She placed a slim folded parchment on the table between them. The offer was written plainly inside. Her grandniece to his son. For years out. Alliance against the chain above Malachar. No dowry of banners, because the house owned none.
A chair at my table. A betrothal of your son and my grandniece at 19. Peace on my cliff for as long as the cliff stands. The books are yours either way. The chair is a separate question.
Cael read the offer upside down at his father's right. His grey eyes went once, briefly, to Ren across the hearth. Her sea-grey eyes came back to him. Both of them carefully did not change expression.
Lady Aurel, you have offered my son a seat at a table older than the throne he was raised to defend, and you have offered it without threat, which is its own kind of threat. I will not take it. I will not let him take it. I will leave with what you have given me on the page, and I will leave the door open.
A careful refusal.
The only kind I know how to give.
Then you ride south knowing what my house has known for 3 generations. The answer to the next letter you send will come from us in writing. The one after that may come differently. We will see which of us lives long enough to read it.
They parted politely in the long stone hall. Copies of the 3 ledgers went to the packhorse in oilcloth. Ren watched Cael to the door. Cael did not look back until he was in the saddle, and then only once, and briefly. They rode out of the cliff hall gate at pale dawn. The small escort behind them. The sea fog lifting off the cliff below. The hall did not lift a banner in farewell because it had none. On a dusk road inland, Seraphine rode at the center of her escort with the wrapped Abbey ledger in a still bag at her knee. The weight of a bailiff's death was now known to her. She rode with a murdered man in her wake and a composure that did not let it show on her face. At a crossroads inn-yard at twilight, 2 escorts reined in at the same post on the same hour by accident. Aldric met his wife's eyes across their horses before either of them spoke.
You have it.
I have it. You.
The same.
Then we are inside it.
They laid their papers on an in-room table by candlelight. The Abbey ledger open on one side. The copied Aurel ledger open on the other. The same broken circle mark present in both, in different hands, in different decades. Their gloved fingers met over the shared symbol.
A scribe kept it for 40 years under a tide. An old woman has kept it for a century on a cliff. Neither of them was the crown. Neither of them was against it. They were both something else.
They were the record. The crown is something that writes on top of a record that has been there longer. That is the thing we did not know until today.
And the hand above Malachar
is inside the record, not above it. We have been looking in the wrong direction for 8 years.
They rode the last road home side by side at the front of a joined escort. Cael a pace behind them at his father's right. The Vane castle in the far distance beyond pale fields. 2 campaigns folded into one column. They dismounted together in the inner courtyard at dusk. The steward waited on the steps. No Lyra in the doorway. The small wrongness of a child who always met them absent. Inside, they stopped in the great hall doorway. The flagstones were covered corner to corner in soft chalk drawings of the broken circle mark. Hundreds of them. In a child's hand. The grey cat picked carefully between the rings. Lyra sat cross-legged at the center of the chalked floor. A stub of white chalk in her small hand. She drew another broken circle beside her knee. Her round dark eyes rose to meet her parents in the doorway. Not guilty. Not afraid. Waiting to be asked.
Little love. Where did you see this first? Not on Papa's letter. The time before that.
The man in the garden. Last summer, when the apples were still green. He showed me, and he told me not to tell.
Seraphine did not move. Aldric's hand lowered slowly to his sword hilt and stayed there. Cael in the doorway did not speak. Nothing was said between any of them over the child's head. They sat, eventually, all four of them, on the chalked flagstones. The broken circle pattern spread around them. The grey cat stepped between rings to press against Lyra's knee. A family on the floor inside its own evidence.
What did he look like?
Tall. Kind voice. He said the shape was a secret. He said it was for later.
Did he give you anything else?
No. Only the shape.
Dawn came pale across the curtain wall. A single cloaked rider stood at the closed gate. He handed a folded page up to the gate guard and turned his horse without waiting for an answer. On the page, in a careful hand, was Lady Aurel's formal reply. Dated 3 months out. A plain wax seal at the footbourneau house mark. Above it, pressed beside it on the same page, the dark red royal seal of the crown. Unmistakable. Real.
The seal is real.
It is.
The crown has signed for a house the crown has erased.
Then the war was never what we thought it was.
The seal was real. The crown had signed for a house the crown had erased. The chain above Malika had been inside the record for 100 years. The thread was still running. Somewhere above it, someone was still writing.